It's December the 1st, 2021. Year's coming to an end already. Um, and Congress is now back in session, and I guess what we've been battling about all year is coming to a head. We have a lot of issues here. The big so-called Build Back Better, I call it Build Back Worse bill, that has finally reached the Senate, and in spite of all the wrangling, it did pass the House. Of course, we're kind of getting into the final phase on what happens here. We also have the continuing resolution, the debt limit, and the defense authorization bill. All these things have come together here at the beginning of December that should be, handled in the near term. So far, it looks to me like at the moment, Manchin hasn't caved, and we're not sure where Sinema is on this at all. She's kind of gone radio silence, but it's not clear what she's actually doing or how she will vote. It's perhaps, I think, that maybe she feels that Manchin is in a much better position to take the lead given his position in West Virginia, where he could easily change parties if he needs to and get reelected. So he's kind of in an interesting power position right now, where Democrats trying to sabotage him in retaliation probably would be ineffective, and they need his vote. So at the same, so this is kind of the situation we're going into here. By the way, please subscribe if you haven't already. A like would be helpful with the algorithm to get this out to people, and any comments you have are appreciated as always. Yeah. So we just don't know what's going to happen here. We have the ongoing Republican position that seems to be coming out about not increasing the debt limit, which in and of itself is kind of crazy in a way. Obviously, it's obviously a negotiation ploy. And I guess the question is, what do they think they're going to be able to get for it? And I think that is, it would be reasonable if you're going to do this to come up with some kind of a demand where your opposition can afford to give it. For instance, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities there. I mean, something on the border security, particularly, if nothing else, some financial assistance to the people on the border areas that are getting run over by all these illegal immigrants and the cartels. I mean, that in itself might be an idea. Or going back to building the wall, I don't think they would give you that. I think that's kind of a political hard point on their part, although it would be something I would be for. But at any rate, that's got to get done, and I think that'll get worked out somehow. And it'll be the normal hand wringing over it, but you don't need to wring your hands over it. That has to happen. I mean, it's sort of like, if a car is speeding, you want it to stop. You don't necessarily want it to run into a big obstacle and crash. You just like somebody to put on the brakes. And that's what I mean. We need to reduce the appropriations, not fail to pay for the things we're actually spending. And that's the difference that needs to be understood. It is a lever, and it's a power thing, and I understand that. However, understand that they could pass it through reconciliation if the Republicans became totally obstinate, or even worse could happen about the filibuster. So basically, that's going to have to be worked out. On the big bill, we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. In the final analysis, I would say that the House so-called moderates all caved, because even the one Democrat that voted against it basically was upset about the state and local taxes and the benefits that was being given to high tax states, and he was from Maine, and he's also, I think, from the district that Trump won in Maine. So that's that's not doesn't mean anything. Everybody else ended up caving and voting for it. In the House, as I understand it, unless something has changed, the parliamentarian is still not going to let the amnesty stuff go through. At least that's the last I heard, unless something has changed, and let's hope it hasn't. So that's one thing we could hopefully get out of it. Manchin seems to be taking the tack I've been arguing, is that they need to rescope it based on the idea it's a 10-year program, and take out most of the gimmicks, and then budget it to something like $1.75 trillion, which means they would have a bill, but it'd be something dramatically less than what was originally imagined by Bernie Sanders and AOC and Pelosi and company. So that's what's in play, and we don't know to what degree Manchin's going to cave on this, and to what degree he's going to actually stick to his position. We have to also realize that he has his own personal incentives, which are interesting, is that they run pretty counter to the Biden administration policy on energy policy. I mean, and that may be the one thing that could buy him off, would be some major deals on energy. For instance, he's raised the issue of restarting the Keystone pipeline, which I thought was kind of amazing that didn't get raised earlier. But at any rate, it's finally been raised. I think now the inflation issue has become to the foreground, where even the Fed chairman and apparently many people in the Federal Reserve Board are basically saying that this transitory inflation story is not real. It's a more serious inflation story, and obviously it's being fueled by the massive government spending of the Biden administration, and to some degree even the Trump administration. But you have to realize that because a lot of this was done as so-called COVID relief, and I think it's safe to say now that the economics of our COVID response policy were completely messed up all across the board, totally. And now we have this new Omicron variant out there, which is now being used largely, I think, for political purposes. I mean, it's hardly even showed up yet, and there's no real evidence that it's any particularly worse than any other variant that I can see. It spread rapidly through an unvaccinated population in Africa, but I mean, big surprise. I mean, Delta probably would do that too. I mean, and in fact, our Delta situation has been growing in the northern states. But at any rate, the inflation situation is real, and I think the Fed is starting to react to it. And they're going to, when they talk about this tapering thing, what they're really saying is we're going to keep pumping money into the system, but we're not going to pump it in quite as fast as we were. Slow the printing presses down a bit, if you will, to use an analogy, but not necessarily stop them. So nobody's really been talking significant interest rate increases, although there'll be market factors on that'll be in play. So at any rate, the main thing is I would definitely encourage anybody that has a Democrat senator to contact them and to tell them that, that we don't want this Build Back Better bill. We're against it totally. We don't need any more spending right now. We need to follow a conservative policy. Now, we actually know in reality they're probably, if they can, going to pass something. Hopefully not, but we need to put maximum pressure on at this time, particularly those that are potentially vulnerable states, or those that simply have a reputation for being so-called, quote, moderate, unquote, not to pass this massive bill. And we'll just see how it turns out. I mean, there's a lot on the plate, and I think part of the reason why the Republicans are obstructing certain processes is simply to buy time and basically to crowd the calendar so they can't get the big bill through by the end of the year. And whether that works or not, I don't know. It's probably the best strategy they have. Because obviously, if the Democrats actually unite and vote on a reconciliation bill unanimously with this vice president, they can pass it. And promoting division is therefore the best strategy that you have to stop it. As far as I know, every Republican is voting against it. I think every Republican voted. One Republican didn't vote, I believe, in the House, but didn't vote for the bill. Just didn't vote. And we're not sure why that was. Whether that was a deliberate act or it was the guy in the hospital. I just don't know his situation. But there was no Republican votes for it there. There'll be none in the Senate either. So I think that's kind of the situation. And I think the point is we need to keep Manchin and Sinema in play as much as we can to preserve the filibuster and to prevent other bills, which are such as the voting bill and things like that, from ever getting to becoming law. Meanwhile, this morning, I guess the Supreme Court is going to have a hearing on the Mississippi abortion law, which basically would ban abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy, and which I think, it'll be interesting to see how the Supreme Court handles this. And it'll be also interesting to see how rapidly they handle it. I mean, there's a political impact here that if they move too fast, it could create a political backlash at the same time, I think there's a lot of merit, at least in my opinion, in going ahead and making this move and approving the constitutionality of the Mississippi bill. One thing has to be understood, that even if Roe v. Wade was totally overturned, that wouldn't ban abortions. All it would do is let states pass their own laws on it, and some states would ban them. Other states would probably make it an open game, like California and New York, and others might take more mid-range positions. I'm sure Mississippi might go much further than 15 weeks without Roe v. Wade. So that's something we'll have to take a look at and see what the Supreme Court does on it. The sort of the composition of the court now is a 6-3 conservative mix, so the possibility of something happening, even with one defector, is there. So, at any rate, that's about the situation here for this week. I just kind of want to hit the high points. We still have a bit of a crisis brewing in Ukraine where Russian troops are concentrated, and the real issue there, I think, is as much as anything, over moves to bring Ukraine into NATO. I think that could be the trigger for a potential conflict if they see that happening. I think that my own opinion on that subject is that we ought to be engaged in intensive negotiations with the Russians to try to work out a deal which would preserve Ukrainian sovereignty and self-determination, and at the same time kind of keep it as a neutral zone between NATO and Russia, which I think would be a stabilizing factor. The fact of the matter is, if Ukraine were to become part of NATO, and if NATO forces were to be deployed in Ukraine, such as air bases with tactical aircraft, it would put a lot of very serious Russian strategic force assets within range of NATO tactical assets. And that would be very destabilizing, in my opinion. It would create a situation where the Russians would become very dangerous, to say the least. And I don't think we want to increase the tension there. I think we want to decrease it in a way in which we can still preserve the independence of Ukraine. So anyway, I'll wrap this up for now. And like I say, I have links to my social media sites there. All of them are the same address, @Hunt1954. Which is below, and I post fairly frequently on Twitter and to some degree on Parler and Gab. I generally just post links to these videos, but I may increase that a little bit because as we understand, Twitter is becoming a little bit more extreme, I guess. But so we'll see what's necessary in the future. Well, until next time.